Let's be real here for a second. Do you ever feel challenged on your pride when you get eliminated by somebody who plays the same hero as you? Usually I would consider myself a pretty confident Zenyatta player. Obviously not as good as your average Grandmaster, but as far as decision making, aiming, and reaction time is concerned, I feel like I'm doing pretty good for my rank. In essence, Zenyatta is the one hero that I believe to be good at. But the thing with Zenyatta is, as long as you have at least an adequate amount of aim, your performance is going to scale proportionally to your experience. I've always said that Zen is primarily a game sense based hero because of how forgiving projectiles are in this game as far as aim is concerned. So the more experience you gather and the better you get at making moment-to-moment decisions on any hero, the better you will do on Zenyatta. As such, there are a lot of people that play him without strictly considering themselves a main, and in a situation where the Zenyatta Diff is on the table, I usually find myself coming out on top simply because of the fact that he is my main. But what happens if I feel myself challenged in my pride without immediately coming out on top? Well, my friends, the result is going to be one of the most chaotic and weird matches of Overwatch I have played in recent memory. And believe it or not, but this time it wasn't even entirely my fault. What was my fault, however, was not being able to come up with a good segue for today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Listen, the year is 2021, and now more than ever, VPNs are becoming increasingly useful. Protecting your identity online has more benefits than just making sure that your ISP isn't snooping on whatever you're searching up on the internet. But being the cheapskate that I am, the one thing that really annoys me are licensing agreements. A lot of shows that I enjoy watching aren't actually available in my country, despite me paying the same price for the same service as somebody in the US. But thanks to Surfshark VPN, you too can enjoy geo-restricted content from any number of online streaming services on any of your devices. Did you know that Netflix is offering different catalogs of shows depending on where you're from? Now is the time to get the most out of your subscription to binge watch your problems away, if said problems are anything like mine and include having to play ranked in Overwatch. And if you're a cheapskate just like me, then you're gonna be happy to hear the following. You can get Surfshark VPN 83% off and get 3 months for free just by using my link in the description below and using promo code Terios. Yes, my name is the promo code. So what are you waiting for? Open the content floodgates while protecting your online privacy today by checking out the link at the top line of the description. Thanks to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring today's video, and now, onto our standard programming. As much as this match is going to challenge me and my pride as a Zenyatta One Trick, I won't be the only one who has to prove himself. Throughout the course of this match, almost every single player on my team is going to have to face their mirror matchup, and let's just say that some of them deal with pressure better than others. While most of our team was hoping for a standard poking style entry to this match, my Reinhardt, unbeknownst to most of us, decided that he would much rather try to catch the enemy team off guard at their spawn doors. Unfortunately for him, he wasn't being very stealthy about it, and as such, the enemy team would definitely see that play coming. You can imagine my surprise when our Reinhardt yeeted the enemy Mei into our front line despite the fact that they knew he was coming, but hey, I won't be saying no to an early pick into this first fight. I was very happy to see both of our teams running a Reinhardt Zarya composition, as that is my favorite lineup in the game. Of course, I knew how to play around it, and through the power of Discord Orb, I was able to keep the enemy Reinhardt in check, who would lose a big chunk of his HP every time he dropped his barrier. While I was focused on trying to help my tanks secure the front line, the enemy team was setting up a pincer attack. Between their Mei wall blocking our line of sight and a nano-boosted Reaper laying into our tanks, there wasn't a lot we could do to help them. McCree and I had no choice but to retreat, though it was only a matter of time that the enemies would try to stagger us. Thankfully, he would keep me safe from Mei's icy clutches, but what followed was the enemy Zenyatta sneaking up on us with a cheeky right-click to send me back to the spawn. Of course, I can see in the replay that I unintentionally tanked an orb volley that was meant for my McCree, but naturally, I didn't know that at the time, and frankly speaking, I don't even know if it would have mattered. In that moment, Iggy Can had put forth a challenge of Zenyatta Diff, and I was determined to show him who's boss. And I mean, a Houston Outlaw skin, really? Either way, with us getting staggered, there was nothing that could stop the attackers from securing the first point. That created a big problem for us because Havana isn't what I would describe as the most well-designed map in the game, meaning chances of us being able to stop the card before regaining our 2 CP advantage at the very end of the third point were slim. Ayana was running an overdrive as she was trying to make sure that no more members of our team continued to get staggered. Needless to say that losing anyone at this point could have devastating consequences for our chances to win, and it seemed like she was very aware of that. But just surviving wouldn't be good enough. If we wanted to put a stop to the attacker's advance, we'd have to get tricky, and my McCree would be the one with just that trick up his sleeves. Thanks to the recent fixing of audio issues, Lord of Salt knew exactly when to strike from the shadows, allowing him to take out the enemy Mei as they were trying to go for a flank. And since there were no icy walls to worry worry about, he could finish his play with a deadeye from the top ropes. And despite the fact that retreating would be the best course of action for the attackers, the enemy main tank decided that now was the time to put the Reinhardt differential on the table. Naturally, it is my job as a Zenyatta to delete Reinhardt players off the map, but it was rather obvious to me that this situation was a shatter waiting to happen. A shatter did happen, and I did dodge it so that I can save my stunned Widowmaker. But I would not remain free of crowd control effects as I ate a sleep dart while clearly hiding behind the box. But hey, this isn't the first time Zenyatta decided to prove how broken his hitbox is, and at least my team was there to keep me safe. The Reinhardt aside, the enemy team was very good at avoiding unnecessary staggers, which allowed them to attempt another attack rather swiftly, though my Widowmaker was very aggressively peeking to make sure we can start this fight off with an advantage. Unfortunately, my Reinhardt decided that engaging 6v5 would not make for an honorable exchange, which means that he took it upon himself to equalize the engagement by running it down mid. My Widowmaker, meanwhile, tried the hardest to put us on their back and make use of the fact that the enemy team didn't seem bothered by the fact that they were popping heads in their backline, though eventually even they would wake up to the fact that she was causing trouble. At that point, we found ourselves heavily under fire due to a distinct lack of shield tank protection, and I figured that I'd take my chances trying to 2v1 the Zarya that was chasing my Widow over getting poked into oblivion, just that a random Reinhardt charge would stop me before I could execute that plan. That act of violence had caused a massive brawl down in the cellar with a graviton switch being tossed into the room, and despite the fact that we were the ones challenging them, the enemy Ana being down there keeping their tanks alive meant that my Reinhardt would find himself eliminated once again. But me having tanked a charge that was clearly meant to get her meant that Veen was still alive to keep us in the game. They continued to pick off targets one by one, not only as a display of their destructive potential, but also to preserve the rest of our team that held onto dear life. But the attackers were determined to keep this payload running with a desperate counter-graviton that I could only barely catch up to using Transcendence from spawn. My Ana had fallen, which meant that I, as the only remaining support, would now have to act as our team's spear as well as their shield. Juggling the destructive power of my Discord orb with the restorative properties of my Harmony orb, I succeeded in keeping the rest of my team on their feet, ready to fight once more. It was simple cleanup from here on out, and much like I felt the bag when I got sleep darted, I figured keeping it lighthearted amidst these difficult encounters could help my team's morale. What I didn't expect was for my Reinhardt to have a mental breakdown in response to my teabag, causing him to try and initiate friendly fire by using his ultimates. To say that things had taken an unexpected turn would be an understatement. Our entire team was rather confused about his actions, and needless to say that we would have rather had him use that ultimate against the enemy team. Well, the only thing we can do now is hope that he calms himself down before the next team fight. Being a tank player in the current meta can definitely take a toll on one's mental, and our Reinhardt was the perfect example of that. I was flabbergasted about him having used his ultimate in response to a friendly teabag, but I guess that taught me not to challenge my tank's ego if I'm hoping to win this game. Either way, while we were still hurting in confusion, the enemy team had made swaps to their lineup, and it appeared that they knew exactly who they wanted to target. But the thing with said target is that his brain is just absolutely gargantuan. He faked being AFK to attract the attention of the enemy team just to turn around and flash hammer them back to their spawn. Of course, that play didn't go unnoticed, and shortly after the failed first attempt, the next challenger appeared just to suffer the exact same fate. At that point, the remaining enemy players had decided it was time for a full retreat, which for better or for worse, we didn't have the means to stop. Obviously, I was still trying to Zenyatta Diff Iggy can, but I just couldn't find a good time and angle to take him out. His tanks were much more competent than mine, meaning it took all of my attention just to keep them at bay, putting my own revenge on the back burner. I was definitely glad to see how good of a job my Widowmaker was doing without demanding as much as a minimal amount of healing. Players like that are difficult to come by, though that performance also meant that the enemy team, including their Zenyatta, kept disengaging their fights to avoid getting staggered by them. Though all good things have to come to an end when an aggressive forward play caused my Widow to get picked off, but I wasn't about to let that Sombra get away with murder, overextending myself to avenge my comrade for the sake of their morale. As it turned out, I would not be alone on the front lines because my Ana joined my reckless assault to try and take out their counterpart, though as we all know, hitting an Ana and her weird crooked frame isn't easy at the best of times, especially not when you're on a timer. And before we knew it, that timer had caught up to us in form of their respawning teammates, and suddenly the two of us found ourselves in a particularly troublesome position. This is one of those do as I say and not do as I do situations. The only thing keeping my Ana alive was my constant barrage of headshots stopping the enemies from just walking into us, and the only thing keeping me alive was my Ana's never-ending stream of healing darts. It was obvious that we were pressing our luck a bit too much, eventually ending up in a prime position to be shattered. But if nothing else, we are definitely consistent, trying to make up for our bad positioning by by throwing every ultimate we had at the enemy Reinhardt to keep ourselves alive. Meanwhile, the enemy team continued to swap their composition, now coming up with a Widowmaker that just kept staring at a single location like an absolute weirdo. That play must have been so basic that my Widowmaker didn't expect it, but I'm dueling sweaty Valorant wannabes on a regular, meaning all it took for me to deal with them was a Discord ult and a charged volley. Once again, it was simple cleanup from here on out, and I gotta say I was very surprised about us having held onto the second checkpoint for as long as we have. Frankly speaking, I was afraid about what's gonna happen if we lose it. Our Widowmaker was good, no doubt, but a DPS can only do so much with the amount of space they are given, and it was clear at this point that the enemy tanks were much better at creating set space than ours. But apparently, Veen was not interested in taking the Widow 1v1 in the first place, having swapped to a Genji while searching for his counterpart, but what he found was not what he was looking for. Said Widowmaker in question remained undetected, and as beneficial as it was to have taken out the enemy Zenyatta, not dealing with them meant that we were in for a lot of trouble. At least our Genji was still tearing through the enemy squishies with, dare I say, frightening speed and competence, a performance you really don't expect to see from that hero in the year 2021. But all the competence in the world is not going to matter against an uncontested Widowmaker that gets to fire into a graviton surge with no care on the worlds. I didn't have Transcendence up to counter it yet again, and as I witnessed my comrades fall one after the other, I decided the last thing I can do to honor their death was taking out the one responsible for it. The attackers were en route to capture the second point, and if we were still planning to stop them, we had to react, and that fast. The spawn advantage was definitely on our side as the cart was approaching its next capture point, but what wasn't on our side was the ultimate advantage. The enemy Genji was very quick about charging up that Dragon Blade, considering I didn't even realize they had a Genji, and surprisingly enough, I was the last survivor. I think it goes without saying that I didn't live to regroup with the rest of my team, and in general, our situation was looking rather dire. Since Havana is a beautifully designed map with a lot of very cool sniper sightlines, we literally couldn't help but sit in our spawn as we were waiting for the infra sight to run out. But ultimately, it was just as I predicted. Widowmaker simply reigned supreme on the last point of Havana, and since their tanks were so good at creating space, said Widowmaker didn't even have to be particularly good to make use of it. At the end, I wouldn't be able to establish dominance over the enemy Zenyatta, and in this lobby where both teams are running nearly identical lineups, it would be the attackers that ultimately came out with the team diff. Oh yeah, did I mention that this is a quick play match? Hey, I'm really sorry about this not being ranked. I know how much you guys have been enjoying the competitive videos recently, but honest to God, I find playing for content extremely difficult right now. Listen, I don't want to bore you with the details. I just got this match while quick playing in my off time, and I actually felt like there was so much random stuff happening that it might be worth turning it into a video. And hey, if you still enjoyed it, then do let me know by dropping me a like on your way out, and consider subscribing if you want to see more. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I hope you guys have a fantastic day, and thanks as well to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. Peace!